Now I give the floor to His Excellency Osman Saleh Mohammed, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Eritrea.
Mr. President, honorable heads of state and government, distinguished participants, good morning. Allow me first to express our congratulations for your election as President of the 77th session of the General Assembly. I also want to congratulate His Excellency Abdullah Shahid for his successful stewardship of the Assembly during his presidency of hope in the 76th session. The annual session of the United Nations General Assembly held under the fitting theme, Watershed Moment, Transformative Solutions to Interlocking Challenges, is taking place at an exceedingly preoccupying time of profound, intertwined, and multiple crises of epic proportion. These calamities have adversely impacted all corners of our global village. In the past 2.5 years, the COVID-19 pandemic had exacted a huge human toll in the global terms. It also inculcated chronic economic difficulties and structural setbacks through domestic economic downturns and disruption of international supply chains. And while this scourge persists, we are confronted these days with equally perilous flow-outs of climate change and global warming, which are exacerbating the already precarious situation. Furthermore, cyclical conflicts, which have assumed an exceptionally dangerous and almost apocalyptic dimensions with the war in Ukraine, have ratcheted up the impending crisis to unprecedented levels. The COVID-19 pandemic aside, the other interlocking variables and dimensions of the crisis constitute the cumulative consequences and telltale symptoms of a tenuous and highly flawed global governance architecture. They are byproducts and manifestations of systemic failure of the unipolar order or unipolar world order that has prevailed for over 30 years. In reality, the much vaunted rules-based international order represents a skewed set of duplicitous, asymmetric, and non-consensual norms and regulations. The fact is, it was essentially designed to advance and safeguard the privileges of its principal architects, to the exclusion of the majority of other nations and peoples. Its rather monolithic and condescending ideological perspective gives no room and space to historical context, distinct realities and cultures, and above all to independent policy choices of other sovereign peoples and nations. Indeed, all other sovereign peoples and nations are expected to fully adhere and kowtow both in their international relations and domestic policies to the gold standards stipulated in the flimsy rules-based international order. In the final analysis, the costly wars of intervention, especially in Africa and the Middle East, in the past 30 years, heavy-handed meddling in domestic affairs, imposition of illicit and unilateral sanctions, distortion and weaponization of human rights, in brief, all the episodes of international and regional instability emanate from and are direct derivatives of the faulty global governance architecture. The negative ramifications of this dysfunctional system are not confined to the sovereign nations and peoples of the global south. For extreme and ludicrous inequalities where less than 1% of the population own 99% of national wealth, unbridled consumerism, which has bred and continues to aggravate climate change, atomization of societies that have literally decimated social compassion and community care by fostering exclusive and unnatural individualism are dangerous trends that will ultimately undermine the social fabric and stability in individual countries and our global village at large. Distinguished participants, my rather extensive perspectives on the flaws of the global governance structure do not stem solely from general and abstract desire of my government to seek timely and urgent remedies as underlined in the theme of this General Assembly. Eritrea has indeed borne the brunt of this unfair international order through illicit sanctions, the use of surrogate forces to create a situation of permanent conflict and instability, as well as the weaponization of human rights to isolate and ostracize the young nation. Excellencies, as we all agree, the gravity of the interlocking problems that our global village has to grapple with is so immense, warranting urgent and comprehensive remedial action. We are really living on borrowed time. The prevailing global governance architecture has lost legitimacy and corroded vital global equilibrium that is crucial for continuity and sustainability. In the event, it behoves us to rise up to the occasion to summon the requisite political goodwill in order to roll back and rectify the dangerous trend. We must recognize the resources, the technological know-how at the disposal of humanity are more than what is required if we set our minds for an inclusive and compassionate world order. In this respect, and in our modest view, one, our global village and the United Nations system must devise a new international order that is anchored on consensus with the full and equal participation of its constituencies. Two, the sacrosanct principles of the equality of all member states and the respect of the sovereignty and political independence of nations and peoples must be upheld. Three, equitable representation of all member states in all decision-making international bodies must be guaranteed through viable and sustainable modalities and mechanisms. Four, selective and partial parameters that impede collective well-being and the fostering of a compassionate social system will require thorough review. I thank you.
I'm a king, go. I think I'm a king, go.